If you're looking to live life on your own terms, it's time to dominate. I am Dr. Spinati. Welcome to Discover with Spinati. Today's episode number 114. We're talking about how to dominate in your life. And the only way to dominate in your life, to dominate meaning not accepting losses, not accepting excuses, not accepting faults, not accepting mistakes, and taking complete and extreme ownership. So this little thing here that I came up with is from the book called Extreme Ownership, and it's by two Navy SEAL, high supreme Navy SEAL people who are Navy SEALs are people that are known to be the most elite warriors that are trained in the entire world. Okay, so they are the most elite. Now, these two people, okay, Jocko Willings and Leif, I forgot the other name, but they are the top of those people. So if you imagine Michael Jordan, that's the reason why I put Michael Jordan. If you imagine the NBA are the best basketball players there are. Michael Jordan is the best of those best, right? So imagine Michael Jordan as a Navy SEAL. That's exactly what those Navy SEAls are. And they are the ones that came up with the book called Extreme Ownership. And the reason why they came up with this book is in order for people to stop losing or to know how to deal with losses. And it's to not create any excuses. Now, one of the things that we often fall into, and the trap that we fall into, is to create excuses for the situations that we are currently in. So, for instance, if you're fat or you're broke or you're unhappy or you're whatever it is, you're single or something, you always tend to blame other people. You always tend to blame your history, your parents, your surroundings, the way you grew up, your environment, your whoever, your siblings, whatever it is, your friends. You tend to blame everybody except yourself. Don't you notice that? Don't you notice that is the thing that most of us actually do? We tend to think to ourselves, okay, why am I late? I'm late because traffic, or I'm late because there was construction. That's not true. You're late because you left late. Why didn't you sleep early? Right? So you can wake up earlier, so then you can leave earlier, right? You didn't have that in your control. Of course you did. So there is a story in the book, and it outlines that there are no bad teams, simply bad leaders. And there's a story in there that actually, it's very, very good one, that actually states that there were two teams on this in the Hell Week. So Navy SEALs go through this very rigorous training, right? The kind of like the boot camp, but they call it BUDS. So they go through very, very rigorous, very torturous kind of training. And then at the end, the last week is called Hell Week. And that Hell Week isn't to test their physicality, isn't to test whether or not they have good physical endurance or strength. It's literally a mental game. So one of the exercises in there is for people to be split into boat crews. And they're split into boat crews of 8 people. And so then, or 7 people. And so every single person, every single crew then is responsible for winning. Now they're led by a senior member in that team, and that senior member is the leader. Now there are a lot of boat crews, but there were 2 significant ones in this story. There was boat crew number 4, which always lost, right? They always lost. And there were boat crew number 2, which always won. And if you look at it from the exterior, the person who's actually narrating the story said that it looked like the people that were winning all the time had good people, good team members, right? That's why they were winning all the time. And the people that were losing all the time had really bad players, right? People that weren't really at their best. They couldn't function at their best. They couldn't handle the pressure. They weren't really good performers. But a Navy SEAL then looked and said, okay, we're going to switch the leaders. We're going to switch the leaders and see what happens, because he believed innately that there are no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders. Now, you can guess what happened when the leader from crew number 2 switched to crew number 4 and vice versa. You can imagine what happened. I mean, that's where the story is going. The crew from number 4, which were losing all the time, started winning all the time. And the exact opposite happened in crew number 2. The crew number 2, who are deemed to be high performers, very good team, they started losing most of the races. So it was really determined that through other experiments and whatnot, that it's not the people that you have, but rather it's the leadership that is actually the exemplar that other people look up to. They say in a business, it's people will not work hard. People will not show up on time. People will not do their absolute best unless they see their superiors doing it, unless they see their leaders doing it, because then it will give them their standard. Otherwise, there is no standard. Otherwise, people will do the basic minimum in order for them to get by the day. So that's why the whole thing of there are no such thing as bad leaders. So no such thing as bad teams, only bad leaders. Now, I talked about poor performance versus best performance, but there are outlines to them, right? There's a method to the madness. Poor performers, and these are specifically leaders, right? Because we're talking about leadership here. We're talking about dominating. How do you dominate if you're not a leader? You have to be a leader. And a leader is someone who is able to take blame for absolutely everything, is able to have such a high standard that everyone looks up to them and wants to follow them. That's the whole point of being a leader. Now, a poor performer, right? Poor performers have leaders that blame everybody. So they blame everyone. They blame the troops or their staff or their team members for their inadequacies. They say the troops aren't good. You know, they don't have good genetics. They don't have good abilities. They don't have good experience. Whatever it is, they want to tag to that. They say that their subordinates are not good, right? Their assistants, right? So if you're for instance a manager, you have a manager assistant, or if you're, you know, whatever it is, they blame them instead of other way around. They blame their instructors, the way that they were taught. They blame their equipment. They blame their environment. Whatever it is, they're blaming other people. Those are poor performing teams. The leaders of them, they do those things. Now, the result is you get poor performance and your mission fails. So you don't actually get to attain your goal. But the best performing teams have leaders. Now, notice how I said the best performing teams. It's not best performing leaders, because there's no such thing as a best performing leader, right? A leader is one person. But best performing team are ones that can actually get results. The leaders are the ones that accept responsibility for absolutely everything. And that's the whole point of the book. The whole point of the book is not just take ownership. It's extreme ownership, like to the unteenth extreme, right? It's raining outside. You would say, oh, because of the rain. A person who has extreme ownership would say it's my fault. It doesn't make sense, but it's extreme, right? They get out, they get wet. Obviously, it's their fault, right? But someone who takes things to the extreme, it's no longer rational. It's no longer something that's logical. It's a habit that you develop as a leader inside of you to make it ingrained in your mind that no matter what happens in your life, it's your fault. No matter what happens in your life, whether you win or lose, it's your fault. Now, what happens to that is because then you start becoming accountable. Then you start saying to yourself, okay, well, I need to learn how to seek guidance, right? I need to learn how to improve. So then they start talking to other people. How do you do this? How do you do that? I've made mistakes here. How do I improve here? They try to learn as much as possible, meaning they put their ego to the side in order for them to improve. And they take a lot of detailed notes. So those are the characteristics of high-performing team leaders. The results, you guessed it, they dominate. And that's the whole point of today's podcast is domination. How do you dominate? You take extreme ownership, and ownership that is illogical. You said, Dr. Spinati, Halim, but I can't control certain things, right? Like I had one person on TikTok, because I said something like, everything's your fault. You have to really put that in your mind that everything's your fault and you have full control of your life. And one person commented and she said, well, my house burnt down during COVID and I got sad. Is that my fault? And I said, yeah, it is your fault. Like, who else are you going to blame? Right? And she goes, well, it's just circumstance. I said, well, some things are out of your control. Like some things are just not in your control. But if you have trained yourself that everything's your fault, you're going to find a way for that thing not to happen again. So for instance, let's say your house burnt down. Well, maybe you could have somehow fireproofed your house more. Like there's always a way to try to decrease your chances of having that same thing that happened to you to happen again, right? So that's why if you take extreme ownership, you will automatically improve. For instance, the rain thing that I mentioned. Just move to a place that has less rain statistically, right? Go to the desert. I don't know. If the rain bothers you, right, and you want to blame something, blame yourself for being in the position where you are right now, where it rains a lot. London rains a lot, right? Do you have the option of moving? Absolutely. Because you're not shackled to the place, right? You're not in jail. Well, I mean, if you're watching this from jail, then I guess that's a different scenario. But I think you're not watching this from jail. So you do have options. So that's the whole point of domination. If you want to dominate anything in your life, you want to dominate your life. You want to be happy. You want to wake up happy, excited, energetic, yada, yada, yada. What you want to do is you want to seek complete ownership, extreme ownership over absolutely everything that happens in your life. Just remember, there are no bad teams, just bad leaders. So make yourself a great leader, Make yourself a great leader. Take full ownership and extreme ownership of everything that happens in your life and live prosperously and happy. And always remember to keep smiling. Good night.